I understand the frustration with having to take classes that are considered irrelevant to what you're actually trying to do as a profession, but it does need to be understood that the reason why these classes exist is that there are major benefits to having a well rounded education, but also you need to be able to demonstrate to people that you can learn things that you don't necessarily want or need to learn, because your industry, your profession, whatever it happens to be, will inevitably change. For instance, try telling a bunch of people in the 1950s that they all need to know how computers work. Like in the future, everyone will know how to operate a computer, where your own house will have 20 or 30 computers. That would have been unheard of at the time. But also, imagine how many people were out of work because they couldn't learn how to operate computers. That was a very real thing in the early 2000s. You can see it in the first Spider Man movie with Tobey Maguire, where Uncle Ben is saying, I don't know how to work computers anymore. How do I find a job? In the same vein that you learn a lot about yourself socially when you try to do things without expecting anything in return, you also learn a lot about yourself when you try to study things that have no immediate or tangible benefit. In that you learn how to find motivation when there is no immediate source for motivation. You learn how to operate when there is no emotional investment in the subject matter. You also learn what your limitations are and how you handle adversity and pressure. And finally, it is good to learn about things that aren't particularly relevant to what you're trying to do because the world will inevitably change and you need to be able to adapt to that change and view learning as an ongoing process that will continue on for the rest of your life. People who don't change with the world, who don't learn new things, who don't recognize the new world for what it is, or who cling onto the past, well, they become bitter over time. They become more susceptible to being swindled from their money. And in general, they have a harder life. And learning is something that you have to do consistently. And if you start early, it gets easier over time. You can see this all over. For instance, the older generation complaining about the younger generation is a tale as old as time. But one complaint that I often hear is older generations bemoaning the fact that younger generations aren't having as many children. However, if you actually understand why that is, it's because a lot of millennials and Gen Z don't feel financially secure. They don't have as much income and stability as previous generations did. And for that reason, they don't want to have children. When it comes to frauds and scams, I often see people who don't realize what they're being offered and how unfair it is to them financially speaking because they tend to not have very good math education. For instance, car deals. I see people get really unfair car deals because they don't understand the percentages and the interest rates that they're being given. And there's also things such as billing options. For instance, there's TXU, an energy provider in Texas, and they will have these really nice looking, these really flashy deals for an annual plan. However, if you actually look at the rates, the cheapest one is usually the least appealing because they don't want you to choose that one. That's essentially what education is. It is trying to protect you from the future. It is trying to provide you with the tools to discern what is happening. And you can get really, really good at that if you learn things that you don't want to learn, not just the things that you do want to learn.